abducted by the pain body. Abducted by the pain body. Who here is familiar with the expression, the term, the pain body? Okay. This half of the room. The pain body is something that develops when we've been traumatized. Post-traumatic stress disorder, what happens is that person has trauma that's still living in their body. And so I'm sure all of us have had the experience of, you're in a good mood, and all of a sudden you turn on the television set and you see a political figure that really upsets you.
Oh, yeah.
Or you walk into the market and you run into somebody who really triggers you, right? And you're at an immediate, a visceral response immediately. And your whole energy field changes, right? Okay. Well, that's because you have trauma associated with seeing the face of that politician, or associated with seeing the face of your ex-husband. I call them husbands.
I don't have that anymore, because they shut the TV off about 6 years ago. But, yeah.
Yeah.
My boyfriend is like that. All he has to see is see Obama. And my God, I mean, I get out of the room. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. He is in hysteria.
Yeah.
He gets really upset.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So the way that we manage that,
How do I cope with that?
the way to manage it is bring it down, acknowledge his experience, and if people get really triggered, what happens is literally, if we're in survival, probably not necessarily a single bomb, but if
Anything,
you,
yeah.
but if you have something where your physical survival is really, you're going to be triggered and you think that you're in danger, literally the brainstem changes and you go offline. You can't access the empathy center. You're fully in the survival center. So to the degree that you or someone else gets triggered and goes into that space, here's what we need to do to work on it. And these are really important tools. There are 5 things that trigger us. I mentioned it earlier in the evening. Choice of words, tone of voice, volume, level of intensity, and body language. Those are the 5 primary things in relationship that can trigger us. So, when someone gets triggered, well, actually let's start first. Before we talk about how to manage once they are triggered, let's try and stop it from getting triggered in the first place. So we all have a responsibility to get to know what our triggers are. Certain words. There might be a word that to me is relatively harmless, but to somebody else really triggers them. That happens all the time. So find out what words trigger a person. Tone of voice. Tone of voice is most often what triggers. It's not what we say nearly as often as the tone of voice. So get to know your triggers and get to know the triggers of the people that you live with, or that you're marrying, or that you work with. Get to know the triggers and honor that. Don't use those triggers then. Be sensitive to those triggers. So get to know your own triggers, get to know the triggers of your boyfriend. And it's important for your boyfriend to be willing to be educated about what triggers you. So that if he does have a tendency to fall into a particular tone of voice that triggers you, as an example, to calmly help him learn that, so that it's important for him not to perceive that he's being judged, because men easily feel judged, especially if it's a girlfriend, because we all want to be the perfect guy all the time, and we're not. So learning how to express the differences and how you feel. And you don't want to say that you make me feel angry. It's your own feeling. So we want to be vulnerable. When I hear that word, when I hear that tone of voice, I get scared. I start to hurt. And what we want to do is ideally have enough compassion and care for each other that we're learning together. And I'll just use Betty and the boyfriend. Let's say it's Betty's boyfriend's tone of voice is the challenge. Well, Betty, you have a responsibility to educate him about that, to learn how to use the tool of not taking it personally, not immediately going into whatever you're telling yourself. And then he has responsibility to start learning about that tone of voice and how it affects you. With no element of make wrong either way. There's nothing bad or wrong with him or with you, but there's a consequence to that particular behavior. And that's what I just shared with her is another really important tool. Always remember that the being is a beautiful child of God. The being is always beautiful. Our problem is not with the being. Our problem is with the behavior. Now, when you're raising small children, you remember that. You're constantly reassuring little Johnny or little Susie that they're wonderful, even when they knocked over the milk. But it's not so easy for us to do that when the being is a 50-year-old man that you have a lot of agitation with. But the fact is, that 50-year-old man needs that connection just as much as little Susie, maybe more, because Susie's getting a lot more love than he is. Or Susie's getting a lot more love than probably anybody who's in this room. Because the older we get, the more people become impatient with us, and the less we acknowledge the beauty of our being. We're not cute little kids anymore. We're not cute little puppies, you know? So the older we get, the more reassurance that we need that you really care, that the person really cares. Does that make sense? So always differentiate between the being and the behavior, and then take responsibility for how the consequence of that behavior affected you through feelings and needs. So